Send a tweet out and tag you and do that. Let's see. All right, what's up, folks? This is Ferris. I am joined today with I didn't even go by like what you you wanted me to call it, because I know he was Izzy Bear 713 on Twitch, and our first meeting was pretty interesting. I was watching Hassan in his stream, and it got into it's a very politically themed stream, and so it got into a bunch of different topics. And when I was in chat, there's no way for me to um, fully explain, I guess, my permission or position on certain things, and so I was like, well, I like tackling weird topics. I've been known to be a troll from time to time, and I guess lately, as of now, I've been trying to be more of a not an advocate or anything like that, but using my platform to kind of help um, get both sides of the story essentially. And so, joining me today is Izzy Bear. Let me get my little thing set up here. It's gonna look a little weird for a second, so give me a second, people, while we fix that. Hopefully it should be good now. I'll double check it. I won't have chat up on my screen, but I'll have it on my phone and being able to watch and interact with that as well. But please welcome my guest, Izzy Bear. Feel free to introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi, I'm Izzy Bear 713 here on Twitch and other social media platforms. Um, Izzy, Bella, Isabel, any of those work. Female pronouns. I'm a, I don't know, hardcore activist, SJW. um, I'm an educator. I've got a long list of credentials and what puts me in a knowledgeable position for these topics. It's not just I'm trans, so everyone should listen to me. I sit on the board of the largest trans-led nonprofit in the United States. Um, I am certified to instruct doctors, counselors, psychologists, go into colleges and give lectures and Q&A instructionary panels, state workers. We just did DHHS here in my city not that long ago. So basically, like, I live this. This is my day to day. I'm seeing a little bit of recognition and creation of like this content and whatnot because I have paired up with Hassan Piker, like you said, where you found his stream I likewise do a very politically and social issue charged stream myself.
Cool. And then other doing that stuff, I mean, do you like using Twitch for like video games or certain games? I like to find some common ground.
Yeah, sure. I'm actually like a hardcore gamer. I loved games since I was a little kid. I had a huge window in my life where I couldn't play. Now that I'm an adult, I'm disabled. I sit at home all day. I'm lucky enough to have a PS4, and my stream actually built me a PC over time.
That's
So
awesome.
I'm very back into gaming now. You see some of my regulars already hyping your chat. My regulars come in, buy me games that they want to play with me or want to watch me play. I'm a variety streamer. We can do the political talks while I play whatever I want in the background, basically, is how it goes.
Yeah.
So a lot of my content ends up staying focused around my conversations, but there's also definitely a lot of video game content. Sometimes I'm just playing something and we're talking about whatever the topic of the day is while you're seeing Red Dead Redemption 2 or Assassin's Creed or Fallout, etc., etc.
For sure. And one of the things that I thought was really cool too is I've actually never come across this. I've been doing Twitch for about 4 years now, and as far as the closed caption feature, which I thought was really cool. I'm always for an advocate for anything cutting edge for Twitch or something that stands out different. And I thought that was really cool because what other feature would people feel more inclusive with if they're able to also take in part of these conversations of having the closed caption set on there? What brought you to do that? And I can definitely tweet out or link out some of the stuff because it sounds like it's a pretty easy thing. You want to go over that real quick?
Oh yeah, it's super easy. So what brought me to do it is I actually have a lot of hearing impaired friends or deaf friends. I'm fluent in American Sign Language, and in some of my earlier streams, for the people who caught me way early, when some of my deaf friends showed up, I would actually have to sign everything I was saying. And you can't really do that while you're playing a game, and if you're editing stuff in the background, switching scenes, using your keyboard, makes it very hard to do the ASL. So it was actually another streamer, and I can't really remember his name right now. Someone else just linked me and was like, "How did he do this?" He hasn't been live in a while. I'll drop you that name when he does go live again, because I followed him and I subscribed to him just because it was fucking awesome. And he told me the site that he uses. The site is webcaptioneer.com.
Okay,
It's
cool.
completely free, and it's very easy to set up, like the green screen chroma like I did, where it just shows it. It's very simple to use. It's free, and it's actually like really accurate live captioning, which is impressive software. That had to be really, really hard to get as accurate as it is.
Yeah, like one of the things too is I sell mobile phones and been like a mobile game streamer for a while. Hold on, let me let the little one out. She found Spidey and wants to go show sister. The as far as like the gender thing, I feel like I'm kind of neutral on that. Before we kind of get into that thing, I'll have a story about the Spider-Man in a second. But I really do appreciate like your channel and what you do on Twitch. Even though I may not see eye to eye with some of the stuff that you talk about, but I think it's really cool. To have like a positive or inclusive environment to go to. For the most part, like the chat and everything else there has been pretty accommodating, and having pretty nice talks with you via Twitter to get this going, and I think it's important. I think there's so much confusion in the world today, and then there's this polarizing effect where you have to be all one or all the other. Do you kind of notice that with some of this stuff, or is there any sort of spectrum to be a little bit of this and that?
We talk about it an awful lot in my channel, because I get people like, if you've set in on some of my political debates, I get people from the other side of the political world, which quite often means the other side of the social ideology world, all the time. I have one specifically. He's what we call a MAGA streamer. That's how he calls himself. He streams with a "Make America Great Again" hat on all the time.
Okay.
His background is Donald Trump. Like the guy's nuts for it. But he sits in my stream on almost a daily basis. He very specifically does not miss a mental health stream. Because he came in and he's like, "I don't know how you keep doing it. Like, I go into the politics and people aren't attacking me personally, but they just come in and attack my ideologies. Like, I've sat here in yours and you get attacked personally. You get your ideology attacked. You get, he's literally seen me be death threatened now. He's literally seen me get a death threat on Twitch now, and he's like, I don't
Yeah.
like. I thought I was stressing out on this stuff, and I don't know how you do it. And we had like this big combo about how he actually just wishes he could play more games. Like he got sucked into the political side, and now he feels like if he leaves, he loses all of his viewers. But we talk about it a lot. We talk about there's this new tempo, this new level of political discourse that everyone forgot that we can disagree on certain things. We don't always all have to see eye to eye. I think the biggest problem, the way I like to word it, is so many people on both sides or in the middle, like everyone in our fucking current generation and time period, everyone fucking hates being wrong all of a sudden. The problem is no one can just say, oh, okay, no, yeah, you've actually handed me something that proves what you're saying and I didn't understand it fully. I need to go read more on this. I apologize, or not even having to apologize, just saying, you know, I'm wrong. Like, I think there's too much of a stigma now to being wrong.
Well, I think it's because not to mean to cut you off, but I think it's mainly because of the viewed as like a sign of weakness, or agreeing with somebody on something is viewed as now I'm agreeing with everything you say, and ideology. I can't even say that word. I can't even agree with that word. From like an ideology standpoint to everything else, like just being on one thing. Like saying we both agree on video games. Like if there was somebody to have like it'd be really funny to see the reaction. And I'm really curious to see if anyone can even do that. Like if they were to have such a heated debate, and you could obviously see they're getting a debate. It's like, okay, well, let's just find something we can agree on. It's like, do you like Spider-Man on PS4? It's like, no, I'm Xbox. I'm like, they will still find something to fight on, because it's like, no, in trying to find an answer or some common ground is viewed as losing, even though it's not. I know. I have a 1.5-year-old here who's wanting all of my attention, and I'm being a little turd. I know. I'm sorry. Mommy was supposed to be here. You're on your own now. Sorry. The world says you got to do it on your own.
You've
Just
grown
kidding.
up. You're a 1.5 old.
You're on your own.
Out there.
So, I think that's also another interesting point. I think do you want to just say hi real quick? Say hi. Say hi. You can't see her because I don't have the camera on the other side, but you'll probably see her on the stream portion, but in a second. But say hi. Okay. So.
Oh my god.
Oh man. That's Michaela. Which she was a little turd sometimes, but we love her. So yeah, I don't know. Give me 1 second. I apologize. This is what's great about streaming during the day when you have kids is you just don't know what's gonna happen. And what's kind of cool is it's lighthearted. We're both like, oh, we can. It's a cute baby. We don't care. So let's see. Well, I guess what was your impressions? Because you came across me in chat, and that's the only thing you said. So were your impressions kind of like, oh, great. What were your feelings about doing this show today?
So I'm always a little hesitant when someone that I've butted heads with reaches out, but I always also try to offer the benefit of the doubt. That's why I didn't like call you out or make you agree to be nice or say that, oh, you know, we can't talk about this or this. You even asked if there is anything that's too far that we can't talk about. And I specifically said no, because like at the end of the day, I believe the only way anyone's ever going to reach anything in this world is if people actually do talk, even on the shitty, hard topics, no matter how much you disagree. There's a point where, to me, it's like I was saying earlier in private call, like facts are facts, opinions are opinions. When it comes to opinions, we can disagree all day. When it comes to facts, if we can hand each other facts, then one or the other has to be able to say, yeah, no, okay, like facts back this. I cannot argue that. Yeah. I understand what you're saying. I might personally feel uncomfortable with this or this, but you're not wrong. But when it comes to like an opinion, fucking, do you prefer coffee or tea? You know, like, what's your favorite flavor of ice cream?
Which console is better?
Which console is better?
Which console's better? Right now, everyone would say the Switch because of Super Smash Brothers.
There's opinions, and even in like the political world, there's still opinion-based decisions. There's still why people would vote one way or the other, yada yada yada. But when it comes down to like the hard facts on the topics, even if you disagree with them and you're still going to vote against them, I can't stand when people just completely ignore fact, science, statistics, like actual cognitive understanding, because that's the way we're supposed to understand and perceive the world. Like that's what we're taught, scientific method. matters.
For sure. So diving into some of the transgender topics that can be a little bit difficult to talk about. Did you come across the? Did you get your breath there? Sorry, taking your breath away already. No. You all right?
On the wrong tube.
Yeah, we still need to be able to breathe air and drink liquid, and there's no changing that, unfortunately.
Not do both at the same time.
Yeah. So, did you catch the story about a Virginia teacher that got fired recently? Have you come across that yet?
Are we talking about the teacher that refused to use
He got fired for the gender pronouns. What's your stance or what's your feeling on the pronoun portion of that?
So, somehow my voice still isn't back. Jesus. Okay, so this is where it gets really complicated with people. Like, is where we should or shouldn't draw certain lines. So where I stand on it is he was employed by the school. That school receives government funding. That means that is protected by Title IX. We've had various cases go all the way up to the Supreme Court in multiple states, as well as at a federal level now.
Mm-hmm.
And as of right now, they're trying to change it, but as of right now, Title IX does include gender identity. All teachers are very, very well instructed and very vocally told, like, your personal opinions or politics aside, this is work, this is how you have to act. Like, work dictates that for everyone, no matter who you are, no matter what job you do. Even us here on Twitch, there are things we know very clearly we can't say, or we would be banned.
Right.
Like, things like that. Like, every employment limits things that you can and can't say about your own personal opinion. If you're working at Walmart and you see a person of color walk up, you can't refuse them service because you don't like the people of color. Or if you see a white person with a Confederate flag tattoo, you can't refuse them service because you think they're racist and you have a problem with that. Like, no matter which zone we put it into, like, when you're at work, your personal opinions aren't supposed to be on the table. Mm-hmm. You're supposed to present as you're supposed to present. And when you're doing something that does receive government funding and you are adhered to Title IX, there's a very clear-cut lay of the land in what you're supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
He said that he would use the right name. Congratulations. That's cool. He said that he wouldn't demean or talk down, but then immediately turn around and demean and talk down. I'm looking for the exact quote. I'm being punished for what I haven't said is one of his quotes, but like, he did say it. He wrote an exact statement. Oh, come on. I know I saw the quote like 2 days ago. I need to find an article that has the quote.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I came across one, and I think what makes it difficult. I'm from a religious background. I think it's very difficult when you're coming from a religious background when they've clearly stated like the separation of church and state. I don't agree with it, but I mean, it is what it is. Like, they can't have any, like, a teacher can't pray with a student unless they initiate it, type thing, and stuff like that. So it's not like he's vocal about that, but I think the what turns into he didn't want to do it for his religious stances gets a slippery slope. One of the articles I read from Inside Edition, it said that it was just a couple incidences where it happened, and the one that kind of broke the camel's back, essentially, which just offended PETA, sorry, because you can't use animals in those type of sayings. So he was describing it. They were using like a VR headset, is what I read on one of the things, and he said, "Stop her from running into the wall," and he said, "Stop her." And so he's known her for 2 years prior to that as a female, and then now he's transitioning to having to change his terminology to refer her as like a he or him, and whatnot. So the other light of it, if you were able to take away his like religious standpoint of it, I feel like even if he said like, "Hey, look, I can't guarantee that it won't happen again," and they're saying that the way it was worded in the rulings for like the rules of how they have it for the school is saying that he has to show intent of doing it maliciously.
But that's not what the firing is over, though. That might be an event that sparked a conversation, but like I found the direct quote. So the direct quote: "I won't use male pronouns with a female student that now identifies as male. Though I did agree to use the new masculine name, and I'll attempt to avoid female pronouns, I won't use male pronouns with a female student that now identifies as male." That right there is him clear cut saying that he still sees that boy as a female, and he won't use proper pronouns because he disagrees with it, which is not a stance he can take while he's employed, especially not by an organization like a school receiving government funding that then adheres to Title IX. That's a clear-cut statement he's not allowed to make.
Gotcha.
And from management was to change the pronouns.
If the only sort of thing I can kind of relate this to is I have a cousin who was cousin Ryan. I knew him as cousin Ryan forever. He wanted to change his name. I don't know if that's viewed as like the same thing, but like when telling stories about him to like family, I have to either clarify that it's still Ryan at the end of the day, or else they get confused about that. Is that kind of similar in a way, or do you feel that is different?
I mean, when it comes to people who speak about my past, I know that people are going to hang up and make mistakes. That none of the laws are set to ever affect someone who accidentally just goes he or she in the wrong place. So like someone calling me he, no law is set up to get onto you for saying that in the United States, definitely. Canada, a workplace or an employer can't do it, and if doing so would immediately receive penalties massively. And if someone goes to the levels that 4 individuals have, like promoting absolute hate speech, calling for violence, handing out paperwork about it, then they face jail time. But no law is written where somebody who, like, say you've known me for 8 years, all right, and I just started my transition and you went he, oh, I mean she, or he, and then someone had to correct you and you were like, oh, I apologize, she, like none of that is going to ever get someone in trouble. And as for like the personal side of it, for when people are telling my story, when my sister, who is like literally the only family I have who actually supports me, when my sister is telling stories about us being kids, she has already replaced all of the words for back then with sister, Bella, her. No one else can seem to do it, but she, without me asking, has very adamantly proven that it's possible and called everyone else assholes for not even trying. So like everyone who knows the person who transitioned is still going to know who you're talking about if you're talking about them pre-transition, in my opinion. So like that's like your cousin Ryan that you've known for ages. Like if you were to talk about him,
he goes by Chris now, so it's very rude of us to not say Chris. No, I'm just kidding. No.
So if you were talking about Chris and you said like my cousin Chris, everyone in the family is going to go, oh, okay, so used to be Ryan. Like that's going to click in their head, just like it would for you if somebody was like, you know, your cousin Chris. It would click for you. Like I'm not for laws that are going to make people gender me correctly. If you misgender me, I'm going to know you're an asshole. But at the same time, I'm very for laws that are going to protect trans people in the workplace because, like, very statistically proven, trans people can't get jobs. Trans people suffer massive unemployment and massive discrimination that then prevents them from going out and looking for further work because they're constantly belittled in the workplace. Hence why it was added to Title IX, hence why C-19 exists now. Like things like that are mandatory to bring another protected class up to being able to function healthily in society.
So you agree with the firing of the teacher from the standpoint of he had intent of not using the correct pronoun. So that's a fireable offense.
It's tough here. It really is because when he was questioned about it, all he would do is state that previous quote. And that's when it becomes the problem. If he were willing to like rethink that and say at work I should call him or things like that, then we'd be having a completely different like conversation and dialogue here. Even if he wanted to say like personally I disagree with it and I would like that on the record, and then not have to bring that up again and go ahead and gender the person correctly when he's at work and do what he's supposed to do, it would make him like a known asshole to the rest of us, but he would at least respect that person while he was at his place of employment, which he's required to do. So in all honesty, I believe the school is in the right here because this person is choosing not to do what he is required to do by law, and the school could end up paying massive fines for that, and that could cost them dearly.
Okay. Yeah, and I read it as she sees the kitty and calling it a puppy, so she's speciesing the cat. Stop it. Stop it. You're not helping the case. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not trying to make fun of it in any sense, but I tend to like poke fun at certain things. My intent is not to belittle or make jokes about that. But she doesn't know any better. She just sees an animal and calls it a puppy. so please don't hate her for speciesing the cat.
I don't. She's fine.
That was just a joke. Please don't get offended by that. Okay. Appreciate that. One of the things he said that I give him the credit for honesty is where I see it, where he's like, look, this is how I feel, this is what I believe, this is how I see it. And you kind of said a little bit like, well, if he would have said this is how I feel about it, but I will try. I get that he's saying that. He just can't guarantee that it won't happen again. And I think that was another part of one of the articles I read as well. This is such a very new article. It kind of caught me off by surprise a little bit. And then we're talking about this stuff today. And I just thought it would be kind of an interesting thing to kind of get your point of view. You want to see the puppy? The kid?
See, I've got 3 copies of the article from 3 different reporters up. I've got one right-leaning, one left-leaning, and one more in the center. Because I always like to try and take in every vantage point that they're going to give. Try and get it. Because it's like everyone says, there's 3 sides to every story. There's your side, their side, and the truth. Well, like in politics, there's like 10 sides to every story. There's your side, their side, the left-wing side, the right-wing side, the centrist side, and the truth. So, like, I always try to take in as much as I can on them.
Right.
But, I mean, throughout it all of them still have that same quote. And it's very, very clear that in his position, he can't say those words. So, like, you can commend him for his honesty, and if he wants to be a martyr for this, he can be a martyr for this. And it's going to create plenty of conversations, plenty of arguments, plenty of issues.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's also just going to negatively affect that trans kid. And then, like, this person has very clearly stated that though he might misgender on accident, he would try to avoid female pronouns. Cool. But he's also stated that this is a female pretending to be a male, and he will not identify them as male. Like, he's very clearly stated that, which crosses directly into discrimination.
Okay.
Because, I mean, the science just doesn't agree with him there. Like, he's factually wrong, and that's where he goes into discrimination.
I think the difficult thing for me is if you're gonna say, like, I get the whole gender spectrum as far as like how you identify as is one thing, but what makes you up biologically, they're stating that. Yeah, that's it. I'm not a scientist, nor do I want to get into that portion of the debate of it. I know we're not going to get anywhere on that. It
sounds like you're leaning into the conversational topic of conflating sex and gender, because you're getting into the biological sex assignment. So, like, I can summarize this real quick because I have to do it all the time. Mm-hmm. So most people don't know it, but there are 8 defining categorizations needed to define someone's sex. Like, we're not talking gender, we're talking biological sex, ability to reproduce. 8 minor categories. Those are sub-separated into 3 major categories, and the 3 majors are about the only ones we ever use unless it becomes necessary to check the other ones. So, when you're talking about those 3 major categorizations, you have physical sex characteristics, so genitalia, right? You have chromosome pairings, and you have hormone levels in the blood, so estrogen or testosterone. So transitioning changes your physical sex characteristics and changes your hormone. So then 2 of your 3 major identifiers become the gender you identify as well as the sex you identify as, recategorizing your biological sex as the gender you identify as well. So while the 2 are separate, an actual transition to one of the 2 binary ideas, if you just hold 2 male and female, this is, of course, there's then all the other identities and talking about non-binary people, respecting non-binary people, intersex, and all of that. But this is just using the basic trans male, trans female to break it down, like I said, simple as possible. Even then, 2 of your major characteristics become, so for me, if I did full transition, 2 of my major sex characteristics of 3 would then be biological female. So as science would go, 2 versus 1 would mean I am on the side with the 2, with anomaly being the chromosomal pairing. And then to be fair, I don't know my chromosomal pairing. You don't know your chromosomal pairing. 99% of the world do not know their chromosomal pairing. There are actually 7 biological sexes that can carry to term in human pregnancy. That is backed and proven by the World Health Organization. They did a full in-depth article on it. We don't actually do genetic testing, so none of us actually know our chromosomal pairings. We assume they're XX or XY based on what we've heard.
Okay. With that information, I appreciate that. They a simple thing is, then if that was the case, why have we not put 8 genders for, like, when we check the box, like it's still male or female, like a simple thing, right? Like, when will that change?
That depends on where you're at, honestly. A lot of countries do have multiple other options, and some places here in America are even beginning to present other options. Here in my state, you can legally change your ID to X for non-binary. So legal paperwork in my state includes non-binary with a slot for other, where you can write in the exact details if you want. And some places are going as far as to list male, female, other, non-binary, and other, and then listing a separate spot for pronouns just to make sure that they're able to respect them off the get-go. And there are multiple other places in the country that have been doing this for years. I'm trying to think, what's the place? India and Taiwan are really popular for having multiple gender options long before any of us. And there was one, I think, that lists all the way up to like 5. I just can't remember it, and they're in a different language, so I couldn't really translate immediately what they are, you know?
Okay. It's very interesting. I had no idea that there was a binary option for a driver's license. I think, for me, as far as like where I'm coming from, the standpoint of like transgender and stuff like that, if you're an adult, end of the day, pretty much don't necessarily care for what you want to do with how you want to present yourself, how you want to choose to identify as. It doesn't affect me at the end of the day. I don't feel like there's anything that generally does that. The part where it gets me nervous with it is the part where if I accidentally use the wrong pronoun, can I now get reprimanded in my place of work? Or as far as like with the children, like with the studies of that. And I think where I come from, where it's a little bit scary for me, is where in Canada, I think they passed where they can basically take your kid away if you were not treating your trans kid correctly. Are you aware of that, or you have a little bit more information on that?
I'm going to guess we're talking about Bill 89. Bill 89 was one of the first of the 5 major laws that has passed in Canada over the last few years. That has added transgender rights, protections, and inclusions to a lot of government interaction. So this, I'm gonna really try to register this back to the beginning of our conversation, because what I'm going to say next, I don't want you to take the wrong way or feel offended. This is me literally trying to help point something out. But like, I believe you've been misled by propaganda. I don't think you realize that, but I do believe you've been misled by propaganda. And I went ahead and pulled stuff up when you mentioned that to me in private before you pulled me up on the live, so that I would have some good reference point and make sure I was right, because I haven't had to talk about Bill 89 in a while. I used to have a lot of these talking points, so I did already know it, pulled up a couple of refreshers and made sure I'm still in the correct and it hasn't been reworded or changed. I pulled up the actual bill. I could link that if you want, but it's a very, very long legal read.
Yeah.
I'm looking for cliff notes because I know how, and I looked at editing. It has not been edited since it's been implemented, and I pulled up an article on it that is actually against it, but still very clearly explains what it actually is. So Bill 89 at no point is going to go into a private citizen's house and take their children away from them for any treatment based on gender or gender identity. Bill 89, once again, brings us to state-sanctioned actions that this one's a little bit harder to describe, but it's still somewhere near employment because you do actually still get government assistance and pay for this. This is actually talking about foster homes and adoptive parents. So this is when the state had a ward, a child that's become, a ward of the state, and they are then in foster care or adopted. And the reason this bill needed to exist is, and I can really go into this one for you because this is a big one. We're doing a huge fundraiser for it at the beginning of the year. Like, this is something that has affected me personally in my life. And the fundraiser I'm doing on my channel right now is focused off someone who has had this massive effect in their life. 40%, over 40% in the US and previously in Canada, not anymore, but previously in Canada, now here in the US still, over 40% of all unaccompanied youth homeless. So every homeless child in America, right? Over 40% of them not accompanied by adults, which usually means they've been kicked out or abandoned by their parents, are LGBTQ. An overall, so out of that 40 to 45%, over 60% of them, like, so around 38% of the world's homeless are just trans for homeless unaccompanied youth. So what happened here is Canada saw the problem that these kids were being kicked out or abandoned, much like myself and many other have been, and no longer have parents. They're homeless at a young age. And the government was taking them in, trying to get them into the foster care system, trying to get them adopted. And they would put them in with other people who were against their identity. And it would create the same problem that led to those kids being homeless in the first place. So Bill 89 isn't factoring or attacking individual parents in their home. Bill 89 limits foster care providers and adoptive parents. Now, a lot of people would say, well, that would limit like an adoptive loving parent that wants a child. But if that's like I'm only using an example because they don't have to be religious, but if that's like a religious zealot or just someone in general who's very transphobic or against trans people, it's cool if they want to adopt a kid. It's not okay for them to adopt a trans kid because that's taking them into a negative mental health experience right off the bat. So like the argument they came up with Bill 89 and what led to it being massively misrepresented is like, well, the next step is them taking your kids away because they wouldn't be trans. And this is why I don't like people like Jordan Peterson and Ben Shapiro, because they take what would be the extreme that they think can happen from this law and then promote it as that's what's already happening, which isn't the case. Like they mad promote that C-16 is arresting people in the street for misgendering people when that's categorically false, completely untrue. Like it only affects the workplace. Like none of these things are actually hindering on your free thought, free speech, or free expression. They are specifically catered towards specific problems within the system.
Sorry, I got a question at the last second there about the kids' medicine. And when looking at for like stories about like if this was happening, can completely agree. Like I can't find any stories of where Canadian kids were being taken from their homes and stuff like that. As far as does that bill propose an opportunity of that? Now I can agree with the point of if the kid was a trans kid and they're going to put him in a religious home, that's probably not a good mix. Therefore, probably shouldn't be going there. I think we both can agree. Like you want to be able to put a home where they're going to end up getting supported one way or the other.
Right, like care that they need. Like,
and
that's for any kid in the system. That not just anyone who's trans. Like any kid needs to find that right home. If that's like a religious, God-believing kid who sleeps with that Bible, that's perfect for a religious family and not for a group of atheists. Like that's why there's thorough vetting and matching to make sure that kids pair with where they're going to go in these systems.
For sure.
Like, and this is just an addition to that.
As far as the other thing, like with along the children thing that gets thrown around a lot too, with the puberty blockers, what are your thoughts on like given like how young or view on puberty blockers for kids or hormones?
Okay, so this is where it really gets into the dicey and sometimes really hot, spicy takes, because people get really, really sensitive about this one because they feel like it could affect their kid one day, and like, you know, what if they disagree with that? So what I say here is very, very simple. Like, as long as the parent isn't actively repressing a child, the parent can be a parent. And there's no point that the state is going to step into that has ever been suggested or seen.
Mm-hmm.
However, as a good parent, so like if something were going on with one of your children, right? Because I know you have children, you would take them to a doctor, you would listen to the doctor, you would take informed consent, and you would do what you think is best for your child, right? Okay.
Right.
So if your child was expressing at like say age 6 or 7, that they really felt like a boy, because you showed me this is all theoretical, please don't, I'm not cursing your child with trans.
No, you're not. Like, just to give you a standpoint of it, like we for Halloween she wanted to be Spider-Man, right?
Awesome.
I didn't put an emphasis on the reason why she needed to be Spider-Girl or anything. Presented the option for her. Like, go, hey, do you want Spider-Man with a tutu, or do you want Spider-Man? She just wanted to be Spider-Man because she knows that Daddy likes playing the Spider-Man game, or has, you know, comic book characters over his wall.
Yeah,
she's associated with that because
parents are the biggest hero. So.
She could, yeah, and you can ultimately probably trace it back because Daddy likes comics or anything like that. He's unlike me if I'm this. So I think there's a smidgen of thing there. Not going into another thing of like where that can relay into why a kid would want to transition or something else. But yeah, don't continue with what you're saying. Like it just. Yeah.
So if for some reason, say that child was then presenting and really actually did feel masculine or male though, and your doctor said, okay, so here is my informed, educated decision. Because if you found a doctor that does actually know anything about this topic, which is not the easiest thing, by the way, but what if you did, you would get informed consent, which means you would get that big, huge list of paperwork, and the doctor and the nurse would go well over it with you and make sure you understood everything. The thing about blockers are there aren't any major side effects. It's the same as giving your child children's Tylenol on a daily basis for 5 years.
I'd have to disagree with that just from the standpoint because has this stuff been used a lot? Like,
yes.
Do we have like a lot of studies showing that this stuff? Because
we had in-depth studies on this pre-World War II. We still have in-depth studies to this day. There was an entire lost archive in World War II, the famous Nazi book burning scene that people reference all the time, with the one with the, when I say Nazi book burning, it comes to your mind, one with the ring of people, the whole back half section, Sig Hailing. There's the little landslide of burning books there on the right side of the image. That was at the Gender of Sexuality and the Institute of Gender and Sexuality Studies in Germany. And it was actually a massive setback, and we had to redo a lot of their studies that they had done. But yes, we actually have studies into like the 60 to 80 year effect possibility, mainly because these medicines weren't originally invented for transitioning. They were invented for menopause, men who lost their testicles, became eunuchs, or had some form of an accident or imbalance that didn't produce testosterone. Those same chemicals used for everyone else for their needs to meet their hormones literally are what's being used to help trans kids transition. The blockers themselves don't even cause a transition. They just inhibit puberty so that your child then doesn't start developing secondary sex characteristics, getting hairier, growing breasts, etc., 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 so that as they do come of their own consenting age and they decide to fully transition or not transition, all they have to do is add the proper hormone they need or get rid of the inhibitors. And the inhibitors can be stopped at any time. Hormones could be stopped at any time. The American Child Psychiatric Association says a child develops their internal identity after they've done studies between the ages of 6 to 12. So pre-6, letting your kids just play with toys, do what they do, yada yada, isn't going to have any effect. After 6, between 6 to 12, if they start to say things, that's where you should consider how they actually feel. And then it's always between a parent and a doctor on whether or not they decide to give inhibitors. As for actual full-blown young transitions, you'll learn that those are extremely rare. The few that have happened, we don't have long-term studies yet. However, we have seen them massively successful. There's literally a famous fucking television.
Which ones are you, sorry to interrupt. Which ones are you saying we don't have the studies on?
So for like the younger children who did transition fully at a young age, I don't think there's going to be any negative side effects, and we will have those studies in a few years because now we have, Jazz Jennings, we have Kim Petra, we have quite a few who have transitioned at a young age because they were very, very sure of their gender identity and their parents supported it. And they have all led very healthy, successful lives to this point.
Mm-hmm. And I feel, there are going to be those cases where transitioning is going to be probably the proper medicine or whatever form they need to do to deal with their do you call it gender dysphoria, or do you see it as a gender dysphoria, or how do you? I don't want to say anything that's offensive.
So it's honestly, in my opinion, now this is where we definitely get into my opinion because some people would disagree with me on this, and this is where you see that we're all still infighting about it ourselves as well.
Okay.
I don't think it's the worst thing ever to just assume that a trans person has most likely dealt with gender dysphoria, at least at some extent. However, saying that, I do also know the facts that not all trans people do suffer from gender dysphoria, and there's the constant idea that gender dysphoria is specific to trans people. It's not. Gender dysphoria happens to cis people. Quite commonly, cis females in a very patriarchal society lead to serious stints of depression for no less than 2 years based on their gender or gender identity. Mm-hmm. So like this does happen to non-trans people as well. And once again, like that's where we actually got a lot of the treatment and knowledge that we got is from non-trans people because nobody put in the money to research trans people, which is why it's always been so hard to back up what we're saying because we don't have as many peer-to-peer studies as the medicine used on other people do.
Yeah, I was reading one of the Sweden stories. It said it's a very small sample size, and on top of that, the research that they're getting is difficult because either people move away or they decide to go private afterwards, and they don't want to deal with whatever else afterwards. So I do agree that there can be a lot more studies done on both sides to figure out what's going to be the absolute more the healthier way to treat it. At the end of the day, like a suicide rate of 40%, something needs to be done, right? I don't know what that is. I'm not claiming to be a scientist that knows it, but I think we can both agree that the suicide rate of
I can tell you why the suicide rate is that high and what best prevents it and provide you statistical facts to back up what I'm saying. My favorite research point for a lot of this is you can literally just go to Google and type the 2015 trans survey. The 2015 trans survey will pull up that. That is our biggest, most inclusive, successful survey to date. We are trying to get one funded for 2019. We're right on the line. We might get it, we might not. We're not sure yet. Mm-hmm. And that is a huge, all-inclusive survey that really did amazing at breaking down the facts. How sad is it, though, that we're coming into 2019 and I have to reference you 4 years back for our most recent statistical survey? Mm-hmm. But in that, it does specifically cite the suicide rate, but it then very specifically talks about reduced suicide rate representation as well. And if you look, so it shows one of the best ways to look at this is trans youth, all right? Because that, like, when it's dealt with the youth and the children, it creates a whole different world for them because it was addressed so much earlier on, which affects how their life then functions and sees it as a result. Mm-hmm. Okay. So when trans youth come out, they do enter the same 43 to 46% suicidal ideation. Now, that doesn't mean that 43 to 46% actually kill themselves or attempt to kill themselves. It just means that they have heavy suicidal ideation and have considered it or attempted, one of the two. Mm-hmm. 67% of that, there's a 67% less chance your rates drop drastically down to below 20% if when the trans person comes out, they are accepted by their immediate family and supported. Mm-hmm. The reason the suicide rates are so high is, and this is once again, like I'm not trying to sound condescending, but I bring this conversation level down to very easy to understand talking points. So I make comparatives like this that I think are kind of naive, but basically the suicide rates are that high because the bullying mentality, like it's a societal problem. Mm-hmm. The way that people react, interact, and aggress trans people on the regular demeans their mental health. And then we all see that everywhere we go on the internet. You are one click away from a transphobic hate rant in any fucking conversation point you're on the internet these days, especially in politics.
I think another thing that would be interesting to point out is, like, growing up, I've been bullied in school, been seen that firsthand, seen other kids bullied and stuff like that. Don't recall a kid transitioning or going through that as well either. And I don't want to minimize it and saying, well, like, goth kids where the outside kids are viewed very differently. Like, any group that's viewed differently is going to get picked on, right? And so I'm not
right. And then those groups that are picked on all suffer massive higher rates of depression, suicidal ideation, et cetera, et cetera. Like, those statistics go supported across the board. If the person, no matter what they're going through, is supported, they are less likely to have that ideation. It's the exact same thing for trans people.
Yeah, and if the thing came out of just supporting the family member or the person there, I mean, like you said, you have your sister. Do you think that made a huge difference in yours, just for your situation, like, as opposed?
Well, I mean, like, my sister and I are extremely close, and she's definitely one of the things that has helped me through the darkest times. But I came out as an adult, and my mother told me that I should kill myself because that would be easier to explain to her church. And that's me as an adult. Imagine if I had been 13 when she threw me out on the street for thinking I was gay. Mm-hmm. Like,
and both of us can agree that's a really shitty outlook and a horrible thing. And whether emotional response, I honestly couldn't say how I can react to, because you kind of brought this up earlier with my kids. Like, if my kid was wanting to transition or she said this, I honestly don't know how I would want to tackle it at first. And I think at the end of the day, I want her to know that she's loved and stuff like that. So, I mean, for me personally, like, on the opinion portion of it, don't use this as statistical stuff. Like, my personal experience, I couldn't tell you how I would react. I don't know, because I love my children so much, and I'm sorry that you had to experience that. Like, that sucks.
Yeah, when using theoreticals, I never ever want to try and put someone in that place. All I will say on that is I do hope, if you ever dealt with a youth, be it your children or someone else's, that don't go the fucking route. The worst case scenarios, dude. Don't do like my parents did. My parents thought I was gay at 9 years old. At 9 years old, I didn't even know what the fuck I was. I didn't know sexuality wise. I had never said that I might be anything. I didn't understand terminology then. But they thought I was gay, so they threw me in conversion therapy. Like, I went through mental torture at 9 years old for 3 weeks because my parents thought I might be gay. Yeah. And then at 13, when I did start to say that, like, I think I'm attracted to both genders, like, I was thrown out of the house, and I've been on my own since 13 years old because my parents refused to accept that ideology. Yeah. Like, it's just, that's the reality of the world that we live in. I mean, of course, I grew up in the South. This was the 90s. Things were a lot more drastic in most places, but some of that does still happen. Like, conversion therapy is still legal in the state I live in 2018. Like,
I lost my thought earlier, so I didn't mean to cut you off. But when we were talking about the bullying portion, that came back to me. It was why I brought up the older part. Like, hey, like, this part back then, like, when we grew up then, there was no social media. So, like, the bully, once you got home from school, the bully stopped. The difference that kids have to deal with now is the bully has access to you 24/7. Or those comments are there.
Real quick, let me interrupt it because it's not to you, and I'm sorry. Everyone in the chat right now, everyone who's here with me for mine, just don't engage with Samurai Flamenco. You all already know who it is, and just don't waste your time. It's going to start some disgusting stuff in chat. If you do, don't let him do it. That's someone who's made over like 200 accounts to try and aggress me and Hassan. Like, it's ridiculous.
And I'm unfortunately, like, I won't time anyone out on this unless it turns into something where they're going to physically say they're going to harm somebody. Unfortunately, this is the thing, when people have their stupid ideas, let them talk, and then it goes away. Like,
that's why I didn't rally for you to react. I just told my people not to waste their energy.
I'm in agreement. So if you guys, please be civil in chat. I didn't say the rules beforehand on there, and I have my thing there. I'm going to revise it for when I have these talks. Like, I want everyone to have a voice or be heard. The last thing I want to do is time somebody out when they're trying to express their opinion and point of view. It's very frustrating to have a 600-second timeout when you say something, which happened to me in Hassan's chat. I was like, man, you guys won't let me talk. You ask me a question, then you say, nope, shut up. But that's neither here. Daddy's doing a show. Calm down. Sorry. I love my kids.
At the timeouts in there, if it was me, I'm sorry. I don't think I personally timed you out. I think one of the other bots got irritated. But it's usually just trying to control because, like, Hassan's chat dogpiles and derails everything. Like, there are so many on both sides that they will just go at each other with fucking bloodthirsty intent for hours if we let them.
I wanted to keep it to an hour, so this is kind of like our little 5-minute warning here. We'll wrap up. I think there's some really pretty good insights on that I've learned today. I don't know if I brought a different perspective with certain stuff, but I'm glad we actually kind of have some common ground with the kid thing where you kind of 6 is your kind of cut off with it. I don't necessarily agree with it. I think if they're going to do it maybe till 18 or you can
well, like I said, like you don't have to like consider hormone reassignment. Like I can't advocate for that because I don't have the fact shit for the long term. And that's where you can see that I'm really trying to do this from a non-biased place. Yeah. The things that I will tell you I use facts are because I've researched those facts.
Yeah.
And we don't have it on that. We do have it for hormone blockers.
Well, teen suicide and everything else is higher when you're that age anyways. And I think it's because you have an influx of hormones and growth that's going on with your body that you're just either not dealing with correctly or may not be aware of or something like that. Because mental clarify, I'm not saying transgender thing is a mental illness, right? The second, I don't have the ability to say that. I'm not saying that. I'm not even going to say my opinion on it, and I'm not saying that. What I'm saying as far as mental illness in general, just to clarify, because you have to clarify these days, is something that should be taken seriously, and it does not have any bias of race, color, religion, or anything, and can affect anyone. And one of my first things on my tabs, and somebody called me out, I was like, well, if you're such an advocate for mental health, I was like, yeah, I think mental health is a very healthy thing to talk about, and having these sort of topics that may make someone feel marginalized or something there and whatnot. I'm kind of holding back some of the punches. This is the first time I've ever had like a discussion or debate of something, not even really debate, just a discussion of this type of topic, and I don't want to get in the weeds or come off and say something without my full thought and heart behind it, I guess, if that makes sense, because I don't want to say like because at the end of the day my heart is like I hurt for people who are suffering, regardless of if they're transgender or not. Now I may not agree with certain things of the transgender movement or anything like that, but that doesn't mean I can't genuinely hurt for somebody or want to have some sort of change or provide some sort of tool or safe haven for them. And I think that's what got missed when I was talking in that chat the other day. And hopefully having this discussion with you today, you kind of feel a little bit, I don't know, hopefully it changed your perspective of how I was coming off in chat or anything like that, but yeah.
Like I said earlier, like that's why I try not to condemn everyone. Like you've really got to push my limit before I would like ban you or be completely done with you in mind. You have to actually get to a point of using like blatant hate speech or directly refusing facts when they've been multiply handed to you, and then refuse to like rebuke them with your own sources. Mm-hmm. Like you have to push to those extreme levels to get banned in mine. And like in Hassan's, we try to stick more to specifically timing out just to keep shit calming down. Mm-hmm. It's very, very specific. But yeah, I do appreciate the opportunity to come in and talk about it. I like that you were open-minded about it. And I apologize if I came off as either condescending or aggressive when we first talked about it in the chat as well. Like I said, we get a lot of anti-trans propaganda. So
and that's the thing. That's why even, like I said, from that first thing I said, I was like, dude, I'm not going to be able to convey in chat. And I know, like, you can read something, reading "Have a nice day" can come off very different if you're reading it, if the person who's reading it takes it a certain way. If I say, "Hey, have a nice day," I was like, okay, well, did you really mean it? I was like, dude, have a nice day. Or like, have a nice day. Like 3 different ways of saying have a nice day have 3 different meanings just in the context. And I think you can't get the context in just chat. And I think that's why Facebook is very toxic. That's why I love trolling people on Facebook. So, I've one of the things I kind of posted on there was there are two genders change my mind, which was kind of inspired by the Steven Crowder video, the two genders thing.
Oh God.
I'm sure you've seen. What are your thoughts on that as we close out? Like,
Stephen, like I've said my thoughts multiple times. It's actually in my highlight, but like I would love the opportunity to sit at that table. I would rip Steven Crowder the fuck apart on so many of the topics he talks about. He does that common thing where all he's there for is the argument and the discourse, and he looks for a straw man and he attacks as hard as he can to seem uber aggressive, and then makes tons of videos about it using pseudoscience and gets paid millions of fucking dollars for it. The guy irks me in his very existence. And like, it's so easy to argue that basic point, like there's only two genders, change my mind. Okay, look back at the beginning of documented history and search the word two-spirit. Like, Native Americans already admitted and pointed out the existence of multiple genders from literally the beginning of documented history and before it. Like, we have known about people identifying, living, and happily expressing as something not male or female since the beginning of time in every indigenous culture in every continent on the fucking planet. Like, it all changed with the Judeo-Christian takeover of most governments and the forming of society. And now people are like fighting out more adamantly because it's easier to see us, it's easier to hear us, we can connect online. We're not as separated as we once were because of technology. So like, this is literally just, this is how it's been. You just didn't have to see it as often before. But like, they say the estimated percentage of trans people in the world is between 2 to 5% of the population. That's more than the percentages of redheads in the world. How many redheads do you know?
I'm sorry, you said the I heard you say the stat the other night. You said the percentage of what again? Sorry, I missed that.
Estimated trans population of the world is now estimated at 2 to 5% instead of 1 to 3.
Yeah, that's
a couple years ago.
That's very interesting. I know because like at college campuses, there's even studies of people saying they identify as non-binary. There's just too many stuff. Like, things are constantly changing. I couldn't even begin to fathom to try and tackle or address that. Like, at the
end of the day, like, my big question to it is like, is there really a necessity to try to resist it or stand on the opposite side? What really changes, affects your life, or breaks down society if there are more than two genders? Literally nothing.
Well, in the sense of, it can mess up like the census of stuff like that. If somebody's saying you identify as this, there's certain things that if just asking my friend who's a doctor, who's a doctor, and he said that you treat a man one way for medical reasons, you treat a female differently. Right then and there, that's a very simple one there. That, like, you're not going to be treated for certain things one way or the other. Like, he has to know like what you are for.
That's actually very arguable, because like the doctors and the like professionals who have done in-depth studies on it state that most medical procedures, like over 90%, your gender is literally a non-topic or non-necessity. The only times it becomes a necessity is when it comes to blood levels that might involve hormone checking, and if the surgery, procedure, or treatment has something to do with your direct genitalia. Right. The other differences can all be settled with height, weight, and other things that are very easily checked, that aren't actually as relevant to gender as we hold them to in our ideology. But even if you wanted to do that, then like, you could still talk about sex being relevant, but not gender. Like, nothing in society actually breaks down over the difference in a gender identity or title.
No, as far as like with what you identify as, is that what you're meaning? Like, yeah, and to an extent, no. The only thing that it has an impact on is if it were to be a part where having to be forced to say a certain pronoun with somebody, or if accidentally is doing that. Like, how am I going to know your pronouns via email? Like, there's a situation that came up where they were encouraging to use the correct pronouns in email, in a work email that I've received. I'm just being straight up with you. Like, how
my
am I
work,
gonna?
my work email includes my pronouns. I'm not
Yeah.
even gonna lie, just so people can stop worrying about it, and so do tons of professionals that I work with that know
Yeah.
on a regular. So that's why that one makes me giggle, because it's just like in my personal life, we already addressed that so that people can't freak out about it. But no, like even if you're asked to try and respect proper pronouns and whatnot, even via email and all that, yada yada,
Mm-hmm.
like quick fix, add a header that includes he him pronouns, like because then other people will add theirs. But you don't have to do that. And then like I'm never going to be or advocate for a society where you walking down the street misgendering me would put you in jail or fine you or break some kind of a law, because that's fucking ridiculous. I'm fine with people misgendering me. Then I just know they're an asshole. I'm not fine with this for you. But then I know we're not fucking hanging out and playing poker this week. You know what I mean? Like, that's just someone I'm not going to associate with.
I think that's why guys have inherently always just stuck with dude. What's up, dude? It's like, I'll stick with that. Like, I don't know. But like, I get it. Like, I can appreciate that. And I hopefully society will agree is that too, is being shouldn't be jailed for using the wrong pronoun. And I'm glad we can agree on that. And would love to end the show on something we agree on, which is good, which I think is a positive thing. But I know you have a charity stream come up. Would you like to go ahead and plug that real quick?
Yeah, the charity I've been running is all month. It's a very long, heartfelt story I will happily tell over on my channel. For anyone who hasn't been there, just come by and hit !charity or ask. We have a trans individual who has just like been that shitty youth experience that we've shared and talked about, honestly. And I opened my house on the holidays to anyone who doesn't have somewhere to go. And he's coming here this Christmas, and this will be his first Christmas since being thrown out years ago as a young child. He just hit 18, and we're raising money to give him like this amazing Christmas and hopefully like turn around his viewpoint on the holiday. So
that's really cool. Yeah, please DM me the links or anything like that. I'd love to kind of promote that if need be, and I think it's something we can rally around. I think someone should have a great Christmas, man, especially as a kid growing up. That's some of the fondest memories I have, man. Like, it's really cool. So, hey, I appreciate you coming on the show. If anyone has any other questions or for anything, I know you've always been open to answer that. I'm not going to hopefully flood your DM box today with stuff, but if not, you can follow. Is it Bella? Can you give your Twitch handle and then your channel?
Yeah, you can follow me over at twitch.tv/IzzyBear713. Twitter handle would be at BellaJ0713. That's linked on my Twitch as well. So the easiest route is just head over to Twitch, check out my panels underneath, hit follow if you like what you see. And I do field any and all questions on a regular basis. Even if I'm not doing like a just chatting, my content usually still becomes these conversations even when I'm playing a game. And we're completely fine with that.
For sure. Well, thank you again for joining me today. Hopefully we can do this again and tackle some more issues that are affecting the world, man. So I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
All right.